and Gasly wins that battle, but he lost a place off the line. Piastri, Russell, Norris, Leclerc.
In 2014, the FIA quietly decided how Formula One would measure fuel. One sensor, one reading, once a second. Nobody thought twice about it. 5 years later, that one decision would help create the most suspicious season in modern Formula One history. A confidential settlement, 7 furious rival teams, and a collapse so dramatic that nobody could quite call it a coincidence. Some called it brilliant engineering. Others called it cheating. Formula One still hasn't told anyone which one it actually was. The season Ferrari became uncatchable.
He just wants to get past his teammates, which he does. Charles Leclerc down the inside of Sebastian Vettel, and he moves himself up into 4th place.
Going into 2019, Ferrari's power unit had been the weak link in an otherwise competitive package for 3 straight years. Then, partway through the season, something changed completely.
And this is totally self-inflicted here for Ferrari.
Safety car's been deployed.
Charles Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel took pole position at 7 consecutive races, Belgium, Italy, Singapore, Russia, Japan and Mexico among them. With a straight-line speed advantage, rival engineers estimated at as much as half a second a lap, almost entirely gained on the straights rather than through the corners. Leclerc won at Spa. Then at Monza, becoming the first Ferrari driver to win the Italian Grand Prix in front of the home crowd in 9 years. Renault's own technical staff admitted publicly they were surprised by the scale of the jump. Rival engineers had theories. Nobody had proof. On paper, Ferrari was simply doing what every team in the sport tries to do: find performance nobody else has found. The theory that spread through the paddock had a name attached to it: the fuel flow sensor. The same single sensor the FIA had quietly chosen 5 years earlier, reading fuel delivery once a second and averaging the result, leaving a window, in theory, just wide enough to hide something inside it. Nobody outside Ferrari's own engineering department could say for certain whether that theory was true. Nobody yet realized the biggest consequence was still to come. Formula One power units operate under a strict fuel flow limit. No more than 100 kilograms of fuel per hour can be injected into the engine, measured by a single sensor mandated since 2014. Sampling once every second and averaging the result. The theory that spread through the paddock in 2019 was simple to state and almost impossible to prove: that somewhere inside that 1 second window there might have been room to find something extra. On paper, the limit looked airtight. In practice, nobody outside Ferrari's own engineering department could say for certain whether it was. The question 7 teams couldn't let go of.
Red Bull had Honda engines this year, the results wouldn't have been any different than if it was with Renault. And the theory there is that Honda has more potential than Renault, therefore it would be better in 2019 and then even better in 2020.
By October 2019, at the United States Grand Prix in Austin, Red Bull formally submitted a request to the FIA for technical clarification around fuel system operation, widely read across the paddock as a direct challenge aimed squarely at Ferrari.
This is where all the race engineers are based during the course of a European Grand Prix. We don't take this to the flyaway races, and where the race engineers conduct all the briefings and debriefs.
The FIA issued a technical directive that, Saturday morning, tightening the language around fuel flow monitoring, the first real admission that the 2014 sensor might not have been measuring what everyone assumed it was. Ferrari's commanding straight-line advantage noticeably narrowed in the races that followed. The timing convinced almost nobody it was a coincidence. Then came something the sport had rarely seen: 7 non-Ferrari powered teams, normally divided by their own rivalries, jointly submitted a second request for clarification. A near unprecedented show of unity, aimed at forcing the FIA to investigate properly rather than quietly issue another directive and move on. The fastest car on the grid usually announces itself through results. This time, it achieved something almost impossible. It united 7 rival teams against 1. The settlement nobody was allowed to see.
Welcome to the penultimate day of pre-season testing here in Barcelona. For most of the drivers, their last day in the car before Melbourne.
The investigation ran for months. Then, on a Friday evening in late February 2020,
pre-season testing is over. We've seen fresh liveries, new driver lineups, and some impressive innovations. So what clues did it offer for the coming season?
just as pre-season testing was wrapping up in Barcelona, the FIA released a statement that satisfied almost nobody. The FIA announces that, after thorough technical investigations, it has concluded its analysis of the operation of the Scuderia Ferrari Formula One power unit and reached a settlement with the team. The statement read, "The specifics of the agreement will remain between the parties. No breach of the rules was ever confirmed. No public details of what, if anything, had been found were ever released." Ferrari team principal Mattia Binotto maintained throughout that the power unit had operated entirely within the regulations. The other 7 teams reacted with a joint statement of their own within days. "We strongly object to the FIA reaching a confidential settlement agreement with Ferrari to conclude this matter," it read. "We hereby state publicly our shared commitment to pursue full and proper disclosure in this matter. We reserve our rights to seek legal redress. Nobody could prove the power unit had broken a rule. That didn't stop most of the rest of the grid believing something had been wrong. And it didn't stop the FIA's own statement from carefully avoiding the one detail that would have settled it: whether the 2014 measurement system itself had quietly become part of the problem. The season that answered the question. Nobody could.
2 Ferraris! Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc make contact, and we've got a safety car on the opening lap.
If the settlement left a question mark hanging over 2019, the following season provided the only answer anyone outside Ferrari ever really got. A second fuel flow sensor was mandated for every car in 2020 DAS, quietly replacing the exact measurement system the sport had trusted since 2014.
Both Ferraris trying to fight over the same piece of tarmac in turn 3, and their awful weekend just gets even worse.
Ferrari's straight-line speed advantage didn't just disappear, it inverted. The SF1000 became one of the slowest cars on the grid in a straight line. Vettel and Leclerc combined for only 3 podium finishes across the entire season. Ferrari finished 6th in the Constructors' Championship, its worst result since 1980. Nobody at the FIA ever stated publicly that the new sensor was the reason. Formula One never publicly answered the question. It simply moved on. For many people, the timing became the answer. Did Formula One accidentally right the problem itself?
Everybody gets the same amount of tyres, whether it be dries, wets or intermediates, and then we have to follow certain safety guidelines from the tyre supplier.
The more interesting question here was never really about whether one team had crossed a line. It was about whether one decision, made years before any of this drama began, had quietly created the conditions for the suspicion to exist at all. A measurement system trusted for years, built around a single sensor reading once a second, had effectively asked engineers to find whatever lived in the space that sensor couldn't see. Ferrari was hardly the first team in the sport's history to be accused of occupying exactly that space. Williams with active suspension, Renault with the mass damper, Brawn with the double diffuser had all done versions of the same thing, openly with engineering nobody could quite call illegal until officials decided to change the rule. Every regulation creates an opportunity nobody intended. Engineers simply find it first, and the FIA spends years afterward deciding whether finding it counts as cheating. what the sport is still paying for.
That is, the technical regulations, is that the maximum compression ratio of the engine has been reduced from 18:1 to 16:1.
The fuel flow saga never really closed. It evolved. In late 2025, ahead of the most significant regulation overhaul in the sport's history, suspicion turned toward a different manufacturer entirely, this time centered on how compression ratios would be measured under the FIA's new 2026 engine rules, with rivals again questioning whether a measurement taken under one set of conditions could be exploited once the engine was actually running.
And out onto the circuit goes the Aston Martin to change things entirely.
Ferrari, Audi and Aston Martin jointly wrote to the FIA seeking clarification in language that echoed almost exactly what 7 teams had written about Ferrari 5 years earlier. Formula One solved one fuel flow controversy. It inherited another debate about measurement the moment the rulebook evolved again. What this really says about the sport.
Formula One is a hugely complex and technical sport. The teams are all seeking an advantage, and the job of the FIA.
One quiet decision in 2014, cheap, simple and barely debated at the time, ended up shaping 5 years of suspicion, a confidential settlement nobody was satisfied by, and a season-long collapse the entire paddock watched happen in real time. Maybe that was the biggest lesson of 2019. Formula One has never really been a battle between honest teams and dishonest ones. It has always been a battle between the rulebook and the engineers trying to stay exactly one step ahead of it. Every measurement system eventually reveals a gap nobody expected. Every gap eventually becomes someone else's opportunity. And the team that found it first is rarely, if ever, told publicly whether what they found was genius or something else entirely. Because somewhere, inside a Formula One factory right now, someone is reading next season's regulations, looking for the exact sentence everyone else assumed didn't matter. Do you think Formula One's biggest controversies are caused by cheating or by rules that leave too much room for interpretation? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this documentary, please consider subscribing. There are many more incredible Formula One stories still to come.